Welcome to this Writers Guild of Great Britain Zoom Where Next for UK Screenwriters. My name is Emma Reeves. I'm the chair of the Writers Guild of Great Britain. I'm a white woman with slightly unruly sort of blondie brown hair. And I will be very briefly introducing our panelists. We have we know it's been a tough year for screenwriting, but in this first screenwriting craft Zoom of 2025, we are looking to find as much as we can about the opportunities which are out there for screenwriters in the UK. And I'll be later handing over to Tom Williams and some panelists from the British Film Foundation who'll be talking about film. And but first of all, I'll be handing over to Suki Venables-Fisher, our TV chair, who will be talking to Simon Nelson from BBC Writers about the TV opportunities. And I would encourage you, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. I doubt we'll have time to answer everybody's questions, but we will be looking through throughout the session for the most useful questions. And we're hoping that we may be able to take some of the questions which are asked and find out answers after the session if we run out of time. So please put your questions in the chat. And now I would like to hand over to our television chair, Suki Venables-Fisher, who will be interviewing Simon Nelson from BBC Writers. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Good afternoon, turning into evening. My name is Suki. I am TV chair, as Emma has said. I am another middle-aged white woman with fair hair and big round specs. My own practice as a writer, I'm a writer. I describe myself as a writer, producer, and activist, about equal, those three things, working principally in high-end TV and features at the moment, although that's varied over the years. I just want to say really that you'll hear a lot, and there is a lot, because we're in a state of great flux in TV funding at the moment. Everybody knows there are shows coming to an end. There are shows that are finding it hard to get or hold money, all of those things. But actually that doesn't affect this meeting, or it affects it far less than you might think, because in the middle of it all, the appetite for new voices, storytellers, and the people who tell them has never been greater. I think what we are aware of is that the maps have changed. And so we have to find new ways into the business. And that's particularly why we wanted to talk to Simon with his very large body of experience and talk to BBC Writers. So I'm going to send Simon on in about a second. And just to say, your questions when they come in, we'll try and leave at least 10 minutes to take questions in this first half, the TV half. And Emma will curate those, probably. I think she will. And for anyone who doesn't know, Emma was my predecessor as TV chair and is very heavily involved in TV from time. Okay, Simon, it's all yours.
Hi, Susanna. How are you? First of all, for any writers who have any particular sight issues, I'm a white middle-aged man. I'm wearing a dark blue pullover. I'm wearing glasses, and I have dark hair. It has in fact got flecks of grey in it, but Zoom is kind, so it probably doesn't come across as that. I've been working in television for about 30 years, and I've worked across continuing drama, serious drama, and children's drama. In fact, I've had the pleasure of script editing Emma Reeves in the past, which has always been a joy. I'm now working for BBC Writers, and BBC Writers sits as a unit within BBC Drama Commissioning, and we work with drama commissioning, but we are allowed quite a lot of autonomy inside that body, which allows us the freedom to find, champion, and develop writers from right across the United Kingdom. We do that through 5 distinct development programs, and I'll briefly talk you through each of them in a moment. But we have a huge amount of scripts sent to us in our open call. We're one of the few places that still accepts unsolicited work. And in our last open call, which we ran from November to December in 2024, we received 6,046 scripts. So we're in the middle of reading those. And from those 6,000 odd scripts, we will end up working with approximately 100 writers. So that is a very, very large attrition rate, and we are very conscious of both the privilege of having that much work sent to us, but also the responsibility of what we're doing with it. In terms of what we're asked to do by drama commissioning, we're asked to develop writers. We're not asked to develop programs. That's not our job. That's the job of independent production companies. And as a broadcaster, we don't do that. But as part of our public service remit, it is our job to develop writers as best we can for the television industry in general, and we hope for the BBC specifically. So our 5 programs are kind of a ladder of development. The sort of grassroots program is one we call Right Across, and that is very loco specific, and where we partner with a particular area and the local agencies of interest in that area. It might be a new writing theatre or screen agency or local arts agency, depending on what the structure is locally. And we work with writers in that area to try and give them the fundamental skills to start thinking about writing for television. This is something we started about 3 years ago. And our very first project was Right Across Liverpool, where we partnered with a local screen agency and with the Everyman and so forth. And our most recent, which we have just finished at the end of last year, was Right Across Birmingham in the Black Country. And we were delighted to have Sir Lenny Henry championing the area and working with those local writers. So that's very much our grassroots program. Our major program is Voices. And Voices is where we would work with the bulk of the writers in any one calendar year. Voices is 6 development groups across the UK, one each in Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, one for England North, one for England South, excluding London, and one for London. So that's 6 in total. And each of those groups has something like 12 to 14 writers in it. And we work with those writers to start to develop their craft skills, to introduce them to the people who make television, writers, producers, execs. We talk to agents and screen agencies and try and make the process much less opaque for those writers. They're all writers who've shown an enormous amount of promise. They have come through the open call generally, which means that their script has gone past several thousand other scripts. And our ambition for them while they're with us over a 6-month period is that they will leave us with an incredibly robust story document that they can then leap off and write a spec script with. Our next group up is called Scripted. That's a small group of 12 writers from right across the UK, and we bring them together once every couple of weeks. We do some similar things to Voices, but we also work with those writers to write, each of them to write a script that they can use as spec script for their career. So the first half of their year with us is spent working on craft skills and industry contacts, and the second half is script editing their spec script. Equal to that group, and it does very, very similar things, but over a longer period of time, is our Writers Access group. And that is the group that we have specifically for deaf, disabled, and neurodivergent writers. And that does not come through our open call process. We have a separate call out for those writers, which goes up on our website, as all our call outs do. And we do much the same thing. But that was the program that was requested by the head of television, and after working with a lot of industry disabled agencies, we came up with the Writers Access program, and because of the name, those writers refer to themselves as WAGs, and we've been very proud of the work that those writers have gone on to do. And then I suppose our most prestige program, and it's certainly the one that integrates with the industry at the highest level, is the pilot program. And that's where we pair 12 writers with 12 indie companies. And we commission a pilot script from each of them. And we pay for the script, but the indie, of course, is bringing the experience and the talent and the development work to the table. And at the end of that process, any of those pilots that BBC Drama Commissioning is interested in, they will put into their slate. Any that they decide they don't have room for on their slate, we give all the rights back to the writer, and the writer is then free to take it to any other company. And we have had in the past writers who've taken their show to Sky. Somebody else took their show to Channel 4, and the advantage was they were able to do it without any turnaround. And that, I think, was a very pro-writerly thing for us to do, and I think it was the right thing to do. And then in addition to that, those are the main programs, Sugi. And then in addition, we have a huge amount of engagement throughout the year in terms of going out to places where we can meet and talk to writers and hopefully give them information that's useful to them, which is places like new writing nights at theatres, or short film festivals, or media conferences, or whatever it might be. I think that's a very, very short-winded coverage of a year in the right BBC Writers.
That is immensely helpful. Thank you very much, Simon. I'm going to ask you two questions of my own, and then I'm going to hand over to Emma and to the body of us to ask the next. And we've got about 10 minutes or so to do those. So thank you for being so succinct. First question is, I'll ask them both and then shut up. So the first question is simply, what is the thing that you want most, the single thing you most want in a writer when they come to you?
That's a great question, yeah.
Let me ask the second one now, and then I'll go.
Sure.
The second one is, what can you do for writers who are mid-career or temporarily becalmed or coming in sideways, people who don't fit the standard model of an aspirant writer?
Yeah. So the first question is fairly easy to answer. Because we're not looking for a script to make, we're looking for a writer to develop. What we're looking for is voice. We're looking for, when we read those scripts, we're looking for an authorial voice which really stands out above the crowd. And one of the great things about being sent the amount of scripts that we're sent is that those that have that really interesting voice absolutely stand out. And you know, I probably don't need to say this in this particular group, but the things that make a script not stand out tend to be a script that is trying to be all things to all people, or a script that is essentially, the writer has kind of tried to question spot what the schedule looks like. And so they've you know, the year after Fleabag, I had dozens and dozens and dozens of kind of sub-Fleabag pieces of work. So that happens quite a lot. And my advice would be, write the piece that you're passionate about, because if you're excited about something, the chances are the person reading it is going to be, that's going to come through. And also, it just is going to make your characters much more real, much more full of life. In terms of the mid-career writer, I think this is a very, very pertinent question. It's a very live question, and it's one we talk about a lot. And I hear this conversation around, I'm in broadcasting, has been a question a lot. And I think especially with the demise of shows like Doctors, this has become particularly problematic for writers, of course, but I think also in industry terms, because the ecosystem has become a very odd shape, where it's quite large and fat at I don't want to say the bottom, but shall we say at the early career stuff, and quite large and fat at the top, and very, very thin in the middle. In terms of the advice I would give to a mid-career writer who feels they've got stuck, I think it's an incredibly difficult position to be in, and I would not underplay that, because, you know, you will hear all sorts of things like, oh, you know, take some time out and write a really great new spec script. Well, the reality is, who can afford to do that? That's, you know, people need to earn their bread and butter. But there will be times, of course, when I think one does need slightly to refresh one's pot, and to have a little think about, I've achieved this, I've achieved that, I'm now at this stage in my life, my career, what is I want to talk about next? And that, I think, is a moment when you should be brave about tapping those people who you have helped in the past, and who hopefully have helped you. By that, of course, we're talking about our agent, which is a very important part of our life, but also people that you've worked with who have been in development, or have script edited you, or have produced you, because they move on as well. And you do not be shy about tapping up those favors and asking for those meetings, and asking them that very pertinent question: who else should I be talking to? Because they owe it to you. You have produced the creative work for them in the past, and so they owe it to you to now help you at that stage of your career. But I do not underestimate how difficult it is in that mid-career of a writer's life.
Thank you. That's immensely helpful. So as I now officially hand you over, thank you very much for your time and generosity in doing this. Emma, it's over to you, please.
Thank you very much, Suki. I've been monitoring the chat for questions, and thank you very much, Simon, for that really useful advice. A couple of people said they didn't pick up the name of the fourth programme, which I think was the pilot programme.
I'll just run through them all really briefly, Emma. So Right Across is our grassroots programme, which is very local specific. So if it comes to your area, then that's great, but if not, it won't. And then we have Voice, which is our 6 groups throughout the UK. We have Scripted, which is our pan-UK group for 12 writers. The Writers Access group, which is our deaf, disabled and neurodivergent group. And then Pilot, which is our group, where we pair 12 writers with 12 indie companies. So
brilliant, thank you, Simon.
I also just see somebody's popped up other dates for the Writers Access group. Not yet, but as soon as they do, they'll go up on our website.
Thank you. And Tom, our film chair, has asked, are there specific eligibility criteria for each of the programmes? Obviously, some such as the deaf, disabled and neurodivergent one, but perhaps maybe he means in terms of how much experience a writer has?
Yeah. So in terms of Right Across, none at all. That's very a very writing fundamentals group. For Scripted and Voices, you just have to be eligible to enter open call, which essentially means you have to be over 18 and you have to send us at least 30 pages of script, and you have to be resident in either the UK or the Irish Republic. That's that for that. The Writers Access group, same applies. For the pilots, we you have to have had either something produced on television but not your own series on the BBC, or have an agent. And those are the current terms on that. I mean, these things get reviewed from time to time, but that's how it stands at the moment.
Thank you. We've got a question here about monetary compensation. Are writers paid for taking part in these programs?
The only one that writers are paid for is pilot, when we pay the script fee. In terms of the others, we run them at times that we hope are very easily accessible. The vast majority of our sessions are on Zoom, and the longest that any of them runs is 2 hours, which means that we tend to put it across a lunchtime or an evening, or whatever we feel is the convenient. And whenever we put our groups together, we do consult our groups as to what they're, if they have any caring commitments or job commitments and that sort of thing. So we do our very best not to impinge on their life. If we ask them to come to us for an in-person session, and we tend to do at least 2 of those, and at most 3 in any one calendar year, we pay the expenses, we pay any food or drink or anything like that. And if it requires them to have to stay over somewhere because they've come a long way, we will arrange that, and we arrange all travel and all that sort of thing. So no one should be out of pocket in terms of getting to us and being with us. But we are nonetheless very conscious that for some people, it will still involve an in-person meeting, might still involve losing a shift that you're doing in a job or something like that. But we do our very best to minimize that and to make those development groups as accessible as possible. And then just to repeat, pilot, we pay a script fee in the standard way that one would pay any script fee.
Thank you. Well, I've got a couple of questions here, which are sort of, could you apply for more than one thing? A writer says that they're a historical novelist wanting to adapt their own material and have written a pilot, but also neurodivergent. I mean, would you say it's worth applying to more than one scheme?
Oh, yes, definitely. I mean, I do read our terms and conditions, which I know is a really, really boring kind of Apple core thing to say. But there are some of them that you can resend a script to. But for open call, for example, we only accept the script once. So we don't take a rewrite the following year or anything like that. But you could send it to open call and to the Writers Access Group, the same script, should you wish.
Yes. Somebody here has said that they submitted 2 things which were completely different but had the same title, and were told that they couldn't told that they couldn't apply. In that situation, I mean, would you suggest maybe changing the title if they are genuinely a completely different thing? Why doesn't the open call accept script adapted from underlying material? Would this be possible if the writer had the rights to the work?
No. So if the writer has written the work, we do accept scripts that have been adapted from a writer's own novel, for example. But we don't accept a script that's been adapted from another piece of work. It's not an IP thing. It's because we want to see that you have created original characters rather than taking somebody else's characters and adapting them for your own work. Some people think it's a harsh line that we take on that, but in general, I want to see what you can write in terms of your own original characters.
Thanks, Simon. And actually, we're running out of time, so I'll just go a couple more questions. Do you accept videos, or do you prefer scripts?
Scripts only, and you can send supporting material if you want, but we probably won't read it. We're only interested in the text, and we also ask the writers to remove their names from the scripts so that the reading team have no idea who they're reading, and that helps with unconscious bias we find across the board. I just saw somebody popped up there, can you send film scripts? You can send any script theatre, television, radio, children's film. It just has to be a minimum of 30 pages with no maximum.
Thank you, Simon. I'm just going to ask one final question, which I hope will answer a lot of other questions which are left. What is the central website for these schemes? Where can you find all this information?
bbc.co.uk/writers.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you very, very much, Simon. And thank you, Suki. That's been great. We're going to move on and talk more about film and the BFI now. And I'd like to hand you over to our film chair, Tom Williams.
Thank you, Emma.
Suki and Simon.
Thank you, Suki. Thank you, Simon. Thank you also to Mia, Liz, Sean and Colette from the BFI, who are going to be reappearing. They've been sitting patiently in the wings for this. My name's Tom Williams. I'm chair of the film committee. I am also a middle-aged white guy. I have less hair than Simon, but it's not grey. If that... I mean, not that we're scoring points here. I'm a screenwriter. I've worked in TV a little bit, but primarily in film. So it's my great pleasure to invite the BFI to present a quick overview of some of their activities and some of the opportunities that they offer for writers specifically. This whole session was designed really with the belief that knowledge is power, and we writers are have precious little power in this industry as well. So the more that we can educate ourselves, I think, on what schemes are out there, precisely at whom they are targeted, precisely what they are seeking, precisely what you need to prepare and when you need to get it in by, I think that will be really beneficial for us, because it's no use having all the talent in the world if you don't get it in front of the right people in the right way at the right time. And also, just something I'm sure we'll talk about with the BFI, this because it does operate slightly differently from the BBC and BBC Writers, this notion of building a team of creatives. You may be a writer director, but you'll still need a producer. You may be a writer, but a lot of these schemes are looking for writers and directors and producers who can convince that they together will be a team worth backing. So we have a short presentation from the BFI. I imagine it will be best to start with Mia to give to take us into the introduction, and Sean, wherever you are, it's probably now is the time to roll the slides, and I may chip in with some questions as we go. It's 5:33. If we have time, I'll make sure we leave 10 minutes or so at the end for questions from the chat room. So Mia, are you unmuted and ready to go?
I am ready to go. Maybe we should just do intros first. So I'm Mia Bays, and I'm the director of the National Lottery Filmmaking Fund at the BFI, and I will hand over to Sean and then Liz.
My name is Sean Harrison. I'm the BFI Network Programme and Funding Manager. I'm a 39-year-old white male with dark hair and a beard. I'm sat in front of a blue background. I'm also joined by Liz.
Hi, I'm Liz Warren. I am also a white middle-aged woman with blonde, medium-length hair and wearing glasses. I am the fund manager at the Filmmaking Fund, specifically working on the Development Fund, Future Takes, which is our high-budget short film fund, and the Creative Challenge Fund, which we'll get to.
Thank you. So just a quick overview. So this is how our programs are very much linked, not ranked. So I'm sure you will know that the fund plays a very pivotal role in the UK independent film sector, and our fund is there to not just fiscally support, but editorially support and champion writers, producers and directors as they create bold and impactful short, feature and immersive works across fiction and documentary. We delegate documentary funding to the BFI Doc Society for those who are interested. Writers are still very much part of that space, possibly less so. So if you're interested in documentary shorts and features, BFI Doc Society, we're primarily going to focus on our fiction offers. And so the funds offer a matrix of support, as you can see here, and what we're going to do is break down each one and give you the information and the criteria for each. And so our focus is very much on creating we support every aspect of your career path, and the onus is on stories by and or about those from underrepresented sectors of UK society and film, as I said, particularly with an eye on impact and creative risk taking. And yes, as I said, there's also, it's not just the financial support, but the strategic support. Also we centre well-being, and support across the whole process, from early development through to release and the point at which the film goes out into the world. So the fund priorities, this is what steers our decisions. Equity, diversity, inclusion being there at the top. Impact and audience, so really thinking about National Lottery has an obligation to serve the public, and that is incredibly important to us, that we think about the audience in how we're reaching and making decisions. Talent development and progression, creative risk taking, as I said before, absolutely centering and being mindful of representing the whole of the UK. So that is where you are situated, where the production company may be based, and also where the story may be, and what the story is. And last but by no means least, environmental sustainability is one of our strategic objectives. So that is also thinking about how does the climate crisis enter our stories, as well as impact how we make the work. So handing to Sean to break down the BFI network offer.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll read through the slides and then I'll just add a few extra little notes. So I've got 3 slides for network. BFI Network exists to support and develop early career screenwriters, directors and producers. Funding, short film funding and early feature development funding for filmmaking teams across the UK. UK-wide partners and local talent executives. A network of UK-wide partners in each English region and in Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales. Professional development, a variety of professional development opportunities and resources for writers, directors and producers. The image on the right is of a director and an actor on one of our productions that was funded in partnership with the British Council, the More Films Freedom Scheme. And just to add a few notes on the overall network programme. So we have 2 main funds, the Short Film Fund and the Early Development Fund. There's 5 regional partners, so 5 English film hubs, that's North, Midlands, London, South East and South West. There's 3 national partners I've mentioned, and there's also 1 documentary partner, which is the BFI Doc Society Fund. The talent executives in each of the regions, they lead on the activity in the region, but also on the funding recommendations. And they're also the boots on the ground, so you can book in for one-to-ones, you can meet the talent executives that normally all hold networking events and opportunities too. So I'll go into the first fund. So this is the BFI Network England Short Film Fund. It's for live action, animation, and immersive or virtual reality for filmmaking teams with directors based in England. Awards between £5,000 and £25,000. Applications are submitted by a producer. We do accept writer-producer submissions. 1 application per funding round for writers. Ideally, ideas have to be wholly original to the writer, and we'll take completed scripts up to 16 pages in length. There's similar opportunities with the national partners too. The next round opens in a few weeks on the 11th of February, and we take in around 5 to 6 projects per year in each region.
Sean, can I just come in there? Sorry. Do you know when the funding round closes for your spring shorts?
Yeah, it'll be the 25th of March.
Okay, thank you. 11th Feb to 25th of March. Thank you.
Yeah. The image is of a production still from a film in the north called The Test. And then a few additional points on the short film fund. So we can fund all or some of the budget. If you've got additional co-finance, there's some additional eligibility for that. You need a producer to apply along with a director. The networking events that I mentioned before, they'll be running some across the England regions. So that's for writers, directors, and producers to connect. There are no biopics or stories based on the lives of real people, and no adaptations of work any other than the writer's own. 16 pages is around 15 minutes. The director needs to be based in England, but the writer can be based in the UK. And if you are moving across from a different medium, this is a good way of showing that your work translates to the screen.
And Sean, just to come in one more time, Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland run similar projects, do they?
That's right, yes. So our partners in the nations, they'll run similar schemes. They'll be similar to this, but they might have different eligibility. There might be different progression. There might be further development on that project as well. So it's best to check on the national partners' websites on when their funds are and what the eligibility criteria is as well.
Thank you. And you apply centrally, but they're reviewed and selected locally. Is that correct?
Yes, for the short film fund, the applications come in through one portal, and then they are allocated to the talent executives in the region where the director is based. And then the assessments are done through an external reader, so somebody that isn't part of the BFI network. They will read the application. The talent executive will read the application, and then it'll all be fed back into a larger shortlist, and then there's interview process as well. So within the guidelines, there's a breakdown of the assessment process and when you were due to get back to people with an initial decision.
Great, thank you. And just one final question on this, because a lot of people are asking about the writer-producer sort of definition here. If you're defining yourself as a writer-producer in this scheme, do you need a company?
No, you can apply without a production company. I would say that you would need to produce some work previously, so you need some experience as a producer. If you are coming across from producing, say, in theatre, then I think you would be applying with a project more relative to your experience. If it's your first time producing film, then it should be a shorter, more contained production. But you can apply without a production company. You would have to be in the role of producer. You can't be a director producer on this fund.
Okay, thank you, Sean. That's great.
Okay. And then I'll move to the BFI Network England Early Development Fund. So this is supporting the early stages of development for debut long-form projects. You can apply with or without a producer. There's one application per funding round. Awards are between £3,000 and £5,000. It's for a single project of 70 minutes or above. Ideas need to be wholly original to the writer. There's also a first draft fund and pilot we're running at the moment. And there's similar opportunities with partners, as mentioned before, in the national partners. There's also a similar fund with the Doc Society framework and documentary. Applications open in October and close around November. And we take in around 4 to 5 awardees each year per region. And the image is of the ceremony, which recently won the main prize at Edinburgh. It was an early development fund project from the north by a writer-director called Jack King. And that has gone on to production funded, but not through the BFI. So they took that EDF project and managed to get funding and raise finance for that in another place. And it's, I think, it gets shopped around with distributors now.
Thanks, Sean. I looked on your website. The recipients from 2023 are on there. Have you announced the winners for 24 yet?
No, so we're still in assessments for the 2024. We're in the next stages of like the shortlisting. So it'll be in the next few months. We'll have the projects that have been recommended for funding from each region. Right now, we're in interviews and shortlisting stage. It's a few weeks away yet.
Great, thank you. And your you have confidence that this will run in 25-26?
Yes, yeah. So we're scheduled to open later on this year. It takes us around 5 to 6 months to do the full assessment process. So October last year will be around March, I think, when we make the announcement. We also have other opportunities that might open, not necessarily through us, but throughout the year. So I mentioned, Tom, to you at the start, it's always good to be on the network mailing list because we include anything that isn't ours as part of that update as well.
Yeah, we'll make sure that everybody has that link. Just a couple of sort of detailed questions. Forgive me if you've already covered this. What are the application requirements for the Early Development Fund, and presumably writing teams can apply as a team?
Yeah, I think it's always worth reading the full eligibility for each of the funds. As distributors of National Lottery funding, there are a lot of eligibility criteria that applicants have to meet. I think one of the main things to note for the Early Development Fund is that you really need to have a body of work behind you to apply for this. If, as I mentioned, if that is coming from another medium and you haven't worked in screen before, maybe a short film would be good as something to bolster the application. The main eligibility is that you have to be over 18, not in full-time education, and you have to be based in England. It's the writer that applies, but you can apply as co-writers, and you can have a producer attached to the application. When I mentioned that the idea has to be wholly original to the writer, similar to the short film fund, there's no biopics, nothing based on the real lives of people, adaptations only of the writer's work. It's a small fund. We don't have a lot of resources to get into clear and life rights. Obviously, things can change. You need to submit an idea as well. It should be pre-treatment stage. So if you've already written the first draft, then you wouldn't be eligible. But you can look on the website now at the previous year's guidelines and see what the eligibility was. It does get updated every year, but as a starting point to see if the idea you've got fits, it's worth having a look there.
Okay, great, thank you. And just to confirm that, you don't need scripts submitted. You don't want scripts submitted. You want ideas, treatments, a few pages.
Yeah. So it's an application form. You fill out what the story is, something on the character, a bit about your creative experience, any supporting materials. Then there's questions on like the BFI diversity standards that are across all our applications. So going back to the priorities that Mia mentioned at the start. And then that application form comes into the talent executives and the external readers. And then if you are recommended for funding, then you would start work on the treatment. And then if the treatment is delivered on time, you'll be invited to apply for the first draft funding, which is to take that idea from a treatment stage to a first draft.
Very good, thank you. Just to pick up on a couple of comments, this is somebody's asking why this is England-centric. As you said, your national partners, Northern Ireland, Wales and Scotland, run similar schemes, I believe. Right. In terms of the funding, some of it can be allocated to the producer, is that correct?
Yeah, so there is a fee for the writer's time. There's also a fee for the producer's time if attached. You can also put in some reasonable costs, so that could be like research. So it might be travel and accommodation to attend a museum, a gallery, to conduct an interview. Those are all part of the application, and then you would be asked about those more in the interview if you're progressing to the next step in the assessment process.
Great, thank you, Sean. I'm just going to remind people that Simon Nelson said they got over 6,000 scripts a year and backed about 100 writers, which in my very basic maths is somewhere between 1.5% and 2% success rate. So I heard yesterday that the BFI network sort of funding rate was around 3%, so it's double your chances versus BBC Writers. So well done, Sean.
That's right. Yeah, there's 682 applications in the last round. For the short film fund, it's around 1,000 applications, and it's about 35 shorts, between 20 and 30 early development fund awards.
Great. Sean, I think that's your last slide, isn't it? I think we shouldn't skip on ahead. Thank you very much. We may come back with some more questions at the end. Thank you. I think Mia, you can sort of power through, I think, the headlines of the development fund and the two production funds, if you're there.
Yes, and Liz, I think Liz will jump in too. So this is a rolling fund support for formal development, original live action animation features, from at any stage in the process. So rolling fund, we just close for 1 month to reset and catch up. Roughly 60 awards made per year, and made in stages up to £60,000. And you can see what the focus are. I ran through the fund priorities that steer all of our decisions. Liz, do you want to jump in? Actually, just on that point, the picture is from Brides, which is we do put an emphasis on making sure we make sure that we have not just projects by writer directors, but also separate writers and directors. Brides is an example. We were just in Sundance world premiering that is an original screenplay by Sohaila El Bushra, directed by Nadia Fall, and those are the two wonderful leads. Over to Liz.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to skirt over this very quickly because I'm actually reading it from the website. So all this information is available in our guidelines. As Sean said, it's worth reading them. They're comprehensive. So for the development fund, projects must have a minimum of a writer and a producer. The applicant is the producer, so we fund a producer for the development fund, but the writer obviously needs to be connected to the project. It has to be a standalone work. I mean, I think it's probably better to answer questions with this section, because if there are specific things that we can answer, obviously everything in the guidelines is available.
Yeah, I agree, Liz. Thank you. Do you want to just hit the the impact and the discovery, and just sort of I think it's worth just reminding our viewers that early careers, developing careers is BFI network. All of these funds, discovery and impact, are for people who are taking a bit of a professional step up. Is that correct?
Yeah, so discovery is for debuts. Primarily, we rate that as the director, but most often it is the writer too. And then impact is for more, that is generally around the director, second features and beyond. So actually it could be a debut of the writer, but not of the director. And just so you're aware, the Discovery Fund is in rounds, and again that has to be led by a producer applying. I think there are a few questions about access, so you can get, if you have access requirements around application, there is support for that across all of the funds. And the information for that is on the website. And then, so some examples that came through debuts we supported recently are films like Horde, Kneecap, How to Have Sex, Layla, Sister Midnight, Rye Lane, Brian and Charles. Those are recent examples. Rye Lane, Brian Charles, Brides, examples of separate writers and directors. Next slide, please. Impact is for more advanced careers. That's more advanced filmmakers. That's a rolling fund, and or for more expensive debuts, above £3.5 million. So we have greater need to support second features and beyond. So this was something that we announced in our last strategy to differentiate the support needs if you're making your debut versus if you're mid-career or beyond. And I think that's probably it for our production funding. This is also very interesting, so I'll hand over to Liz around our new Labs Fund, Creative Challenge Fund, and what's coming next.
Yeah, I'm just going to plough through this because I'm just very conscious of the time. So the Creative Challenge Fund was launched at the beginning of the Screen Culture 2033 strategy. I'm just going to read the aim from the screen. So it aims to decentralise project development by supporting organisations outside of the BFI to run creative development programmes such as labs and workshop series to stimulate a healthier and wider ecosystem in which UK filmmakers can develop new projects. So we are issuing a specific challenge. That the first round was genre. So we identified within our own kind of production and development funds that 53% of projects we were receiving in application were for drama. So in order to try to make an intervention to change that, we issued the first challenge being genre. So we awarded 8 organisations to run and deliver development labs over the autumn period. So they're all currently coming to an end. There were 8 organisations funded, so 8 labs running. They totaled around 120 beneficiaries. They were incredibly well received. They all received, over 100, 150 applications per lab. Each lab supported 10 to 12 participants. Some of those were specifically aimed at writers, and those writers just were applying themselves. Some were aimed at teams, and each lab had a different criteria on how they would do that. The idea with the labs is that it was obviously decentralized from our decision-making process, but run kind of to complement what we do within the central BFI filmmaking funds. So we weren't involved in the selection processes of those labs. We had, this was another opportunity for writers who work within immersive. Currently, this is the opportunity for where writers can get support. The primary other point to note is that the participants were being paid. So those participants that were successful on the labs were got a stipend payment for the time that they spent participating.
Great, thank you, Liz. I've looked through these, and they're all fantastic. Each one really delivering against a need. The fact that they're all in delivery mode now, and that we don't know exactly in what state they're going to return, if they're going to return, I think it is less significant for our members than to understand that these opportunities do come up. And if you're talking about somewhere between 10 and 20 writers benefiting from each lab, really the message is to stay on keep across the announcements coming out, because I was aware that this was announced, and then there's a bit of an emphasis to the writers to research and find out specifically what where their skill sets or their interests might align with these labs. But I think it's a good example of decentralization and opening up opportunities across the country. So, but you said let's wait and see later on in the year potentially how the impact of these labs is measured and reviewed, and in what shape they might return. Is that correct?
Yes, they absolutely will return. We have ambitions for the next round to open relatively soon, but I can't at this point confirm what the challenge will be. So you'll have to watch this space.
Yeah, understood. Very good. And then your last slide, Liz, I think, if I remember, is a couple of these short film schemes, both of which are on hiatus. Is that correct?
Sean, can you skip on? Oh, is that the end?
Sean's gone.
Has Sean vanished? I think the final slide was a focus on 2 of our high budget short film schemes. One was the Short Form Animation Fund, which is currently closed. We're in the process of just confirming the last round. So 10 projects were supported in the last round. And the other one is Future Takes, which is our high budget short film fund, which is in partnership with Film 4. That was 8 films that were awarded up to 90,000 each. They came as a team, so that was definitely focused on the team. Again, the lead contact was the producer. And we will be running that again. So watch this space again for the next round of Future Takes.
Very good, Liz. Thank you. I've just got a couple of questions. Maybe one one for Sean, if you're still there, Sean, just to pick up on something you said. You talked about arranging, or the possibility of one-to-one meetings with local talent reps. Do you have any information or advice on how best to go about that? I mean, I can imagine that those are quite valuable opportunities. Is it just a matter of asking politely?
No, yeah. So each of the hubs run their own activity and own events for connecting with talent executives. We cannot comment or read scripts outside of the application process, so the execs won't be able to give you any direct feedback. So rather than do a one-to-ones, a lot of the regions do roundtables. That way, they'll be online. You get a chance to meet filmmakers from across the region. A lot of the questions people ask tend to be quite similar, so the execs already got quite a lot of knowledge and responding to those. But also, it's a good way to hear about what everyone else is struggling with, what everyone else is asking as part of the application process. If you go, I'll drop some links in the chat, but through the hubs, there's normally like a connect with us page, and it'll link to any upcoming events. That might be like a coffee morning, online roundtable. So hubs do 20-minute one-to-ones. Some do in-person mixes, some do online mixes. So it really depends on where you're based. For London, for example, you can imagine it's quite hard for everyone to meet in the north as well, given the size of the region. So it's best to see each month what's coming up.
Very good, thanks, Sean. And each hub has its own area on your site, I believe. Yeah. Kate Glasspool, is everybody all right just to carry on for another couple of minutes just to get through the last questions? Thank you. Mia, just a couple of questions on the development fund. One is about you said that the number was 53% of your applications are drama. Is there any sort of specific desire for genre, or I mean, I'm sure you remain agnostic, but is there anything that you'd like to see more of? If that's going to stand out from the crowd, that would be helpful for us. And can you also please just confirm that debut is not synonymous with young? It could still be mid-age, mid-career.
Yep, that's absolutely correct. So absolutely, there is no age prejudice. And lots of there is a very wide range of ages across the slate, and which is very important. And so, sorry, I've forgotten the first question.
Is there anything that you're feeling short changed on in terms of your applications?
Well, the thing is, I mean, just to really clarify, we don't work within a commissioning structure, so we're application based. We are a fund, so we cannot mark out and say we are looking for XYZ. We are serving the industry, and therefore we're supporting the creative process. It's beholden to commissioners and other funders to perhaps be more specific about what they are curating slates. We are not. They're end users. We are not. We are supporting what you want to make and stories you want to tell. What our job is then to make sure that we are activating and supporting projects across the creative process that are coming, that fit our priorities, basically. So, that's why we looked at our slate, and that's why we did labs that focused on genre, because we were seeing that there was a lack, and that's a kind of common conversation point across the industry. So it's not, we just don't operate in that way. We're not looking for anything. We are responsive to what you have to show us. Can I just clear up one point? Actually, there was a point about disadvantaging people from the regions, from the Discovery Fund. You don't have to have any funding to come to us. You just can't apply. We can't fully fund, so you just have to make sure that in the finance plan you're evidencing, the producer's evidencing that they've done some work before. It literally can just be a letter of intent or some interest, so no one's disadvantaged. You don't have to have money already attached. You just have to have some progress when you come to us. It gives you a bit more of a leg up.
Very good, thank you, Mia. Just one more question for Liz, or rather just to bring you back in, because before the session began, you said that you were eager to hear the thoughts of our members on possibly some serviced areas of writing, or whether that's genre or regional areas that you could feed into your thought process as you review the creative challenge structure going forwards. How best would you can you put that in your own words possibly? And I'm very happy to act as the kind of conduit for that, and I can share my my Writers Guild email later on. Could you just sort of expand on that for our members, if you're sort of seeking feedback?
Yeah, I'm not sure we can do that now. We're 5 minutes already over time, because that's probably opening the whole
written
section.
Submissions.
Yeah. Yes. No. I mean, obviously, one of the purposes of the challenge funds was to be responsive to the needs of the wider sector. So participating in events like this is really valuable and useful to understand and gauge where the needs are. I mean, as we can't fix all the problems with the challenge fund. It is very specifically designed around project development, but it's always useful to be able to understand where those needs are coming from and what those needs are, and how the challenge fund could not necessarily specifically address them, but how it could lean into that.
That's fair, Liz, for sure. My email address, I'll put it in the chat at the end, but it's film@writersguild.org.uk. If you have any thoughts on what Liz has just said, and indeed, anything that Mia and Sean and their team have said that you'd like to feed back, I will do that. And we're also going to collate all the questions in the chat that we haven't been able to get to, and if there are sort of recurring themes, we'll try to pose those in a follow-up to this, and hopefully get an email out to you all next week, just with anything that we haven't been able to get to. Just before we finish, I'd like to, because other funding opportunities are available, we're very grateful to the BFI and to BBC for giving us their time today. I would encourage you all to look at BAFTA. They offer various breakthrough and elevate schemes, and their Roadcliffe new writing scheme is open, I believe, for family scripts in April and TV drama scripts in September this year. That's always worth getting your scripts in there. Channel 4 have a screenwriting course. It looks like their application window is in the autumn. It was October last year. They run workshops in January and June, and that is meant to be very much worthwhile looking at. This is a third-party provider, but in doing my research today, I saw that Script Angel, the script consultancy website, has a very good kind of calendar of deadlines. Some of these are schemes, some of these are competitions, and we don't endorse any particular competition. And indeed, we would encourage you to look at some of our guidance on competition versus commission, because they don't all have preferable terms for writers, but it's a good way to see what is out there for you all, and just to start to build up your calendar. If it's October for a BBC or a Channel 4 screenwriting program, that sounds like 8 or 9 months of very good prep time, so that you're completely lined up when the application date comes around. I'm going to shut up now. Emma, do you want to bring this to a close?
I will. I just want to thank everyone, especially you, Tom, and also Mia, Liz, and Colette and Sean from the BFI. Thank you so much for a really interesting session.